Hello and welcome to today's online seminar where we're going to be exploring the challenge of early stage attrition in the contact centre. I'm Lee Hopwood, CEO here at CCMA, and I'm joined by Kate Orr, our Director of Membership and Learning, and she's also responsible for the UK National Contact Centre Academy, CCMA's training arm. And in a while, we'll also be joined by Jane Redgrave, Head of Consumer Retention at Bupa, and Alice Bush, Head of Operations at Take Payments. Kate, welcome. It's not often you and I do a seminar together.
No, it feels really strange being on the receiving end of a seminar with you, Lee. But it's really good to be here. Thank you.
Oh, good to see you. Now, as usual, for all of those guys that are watching, please feel free to use the chat to share any views you might have as we go through the next hour. And that chat, if you send it to everyone, then everybody will be able to see those views. And feel free to share advice along the way as well. And if you've got any questions, please do pop those in the Q&A, and I'll see what I can do to pose them to our panel. Kate, I hope you're ready for those. So let's start by understanding the challenge and how big an issue retaining new frontline talent is for the contact centre. Kate, I'm going to hand over to you to share what you've discovered. I shall be back to join you in a moment.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if I can share my screen. Think you can see that all okay? Perfect. Okay, so what we are hearing, and I thought it was really useful to really bring to life and share on today's session, was the challenge that we are hearing from across the membership and from across the community. So for us, what we are hearing is that the candidates don't always recognise the role in the contact centre as a career of choice. It tends to be we hear more that this is an accidental role. I'm applying for something. I don't see myself that I'm going to be doing that role for a long period of time, and don't necessarily always understand how you can create and carve out a career working within the contact centre. And I don't think that's necessarily ever changed. I think that's always been there. But I think that, even more so now, we are seeing that it's not recognised as one of those contact centre careers or choices. Organisations are finding it harder to attract the right candidates. As automation and digital transformation has taken place in a real key agenda for a lot of organisations, that the role of the contact centre advisor has evolved, and organisations are struggling to find the right fit, whether that be a culture fit or whether that be from a technical capability. And also then we are hearing that retaining those frontline colleagues is a challenge. And I want to bring that to life a little bit further. So from last year's benchmarking report, when we asked our members who took part in benchmarking what their attrition rate for the 12-month period, so this is 2023's data, that the total attrition was at 33% on average. But of that, 27% was attrition within the first 6 months. So that's really a lot of people, all that hard work going into getting the people. Recruitment teams are working hard to bring the right people into your organisation. But actually, are they right? Because they're leaving within that 6-month period. And that's for many different reasons. But I really wanted to share and bring that to life, that it is still a problem. It is still a challenge that's out there. And you can see from the graph on the right-hand side of that breakdown of actually the volume of what they're seeing from a volume point of view within those 6 months, and that breakdown. And going forward, we're actually seeing the same kind of trend. So those of you that have taken part in this year's benchmarking, we are seeing a similar trend. I was looking at the data as we're going through the validation process at the moment, and I had a look at it yesterday, and we are still seeing that trend. So that problem has not gone away. There's a lot of great things that are now taking place, and organisations are adapting, but actually that problem is still there. That is still a challenge from across organisations. So attraction, organisations are struggling to attract the right candidates with the right skills, the right value, the right culture fit, and the right behaviours. Gone are the days necessarily where organisations are recruiting somebody because they've worked within a contact centre. Oh yes, they've worked in a contact centre down the road. We'll take them. We know they've got the right skills. So organisations now are thinking about how they attract a different type of person. How is that person those transferable skills, and actually have they got the right values? Do they want to service customers? Is that passionate for those individuals, and are they the right culture fit for that organisation? Recruitment processes have had to be adapted to support different ways of working. A lot of organisations are working in a hybrid environment still, and whether that's 2 days in the office and the rest at home or vice versa, recruitment teams have had to adapt how they recruit. We used to, typically have assessment days, bring people in, we do face-to-face interviews. Well, now we're seeing a lot more interviews taking place through Teams or through the telephone a little bit more. We have to adapt how we actually recruit, because necessarily those individuals that we are recruiting are not living around the corner. They may be the other end of the country. So recruitment teams have really had to adapt on how we actually recruit the right people for the organisation. But creating that brand stickiness is also so important, that we are hearing a lot more that a lot of organisations are really trying to find different ways to get people to create that brand stickiness, to retain that employee, So recruiting to train the wrong candidates for an organisation can be really costly. So making sure that, one, they've got the right person, they're attracting the right person, but actually making sure that they're really creating that stickiness to the brand, and that individual feels that they are passionate, that's the brand they want to work for, and that's where they see themselves and developing their organisation long term. So just really wanted to share with what we are actually seeing from across the community and what we are hearing. But that's all from me, Lee.
Thank you so much. And you know what? You should do this more often. And interestingly, a comment has already come in the chat. The recruitment pool is smaller now, so it is harder. So thank you so much, Kate. Now I'd like to bring Jane and Alice into the conversation now. So while they join us, let's go to our first poll. So our first poll, we've got 3 polls today, so I hope you're ready to get nice and interactive with us. So the first poll is, what is your top challenge in recruiting for the front line today? Now, is it that you can't attract enough people to the role? Is it that you are not able to offer the salary to attract the right people? Maybe it's not the right experience. You can't get the right experience for the role. Maybe you're seeing a large dropout through the recruitment process and just before they actually join you. Maybe it's candidates don't understand what the role is. Maybe it's difficult keeping people beyond that 3 months. And maybe it's just simply asking people to come into the office is really hard. So hopefully you've all had a chance to vote what your top challenge is in recruiting for the frontline today. So let's go to the results. What do the results tell us? Interesting. Can't attract enough people to the role. 22% behind that. Not the right experience for the role. 18%. Kate, what's your take on the results that you see in front of you?
So for me, there's no surprises there. We are hearing that there is that shortage, and I think, as per the comments in the chat, is that there's a volume of people that we still need. But where are those people? Where are they hiding? And we hear that quite a lot. So there's no real surprises there than what I'm hearing from across the membership. What I see on here is asking people to come into the office, which is quite interesting. So there's still 4%, which are still a bit of a challenge. Because actually that's become more of the norm again now. And we hear that actually that contact center agents want to go back into the office because they like that interaction and they were missing that. So that's quite interesting that there's still 4% that are finding that a challenge.
Interesting. Jane, do these results really resonate with what your experiences have been at Bupa?
Definitely. I think in terms of the candidate pool, as Kate said, as the poll shows, Andrew says in the chat, we're definitely seeing that starting to dry up. We're based in the south and we're based in Manchester as well. And in both areas, we're seeing that has dried up and there are less people actually applying for the roles now. I think it's quite interesting that they're not coming into the office, because we've also had to change our recruitment strategy because there aren't enough candidates, and actually move to remote working. And we started to recruit workers that are purely working remotely back in November 22. And that was our first kind of dip in the water in terms of needing to do that, just because we didn't have the candidates in the local area near the office. So that's definitely a challenge for us, and we have found that by opening up to remote workers, actually the candidate pool has really opened up. We've been able to get to people that we never would have been able to get to before. Interestingly, when we went for purely remote workers and we put our advert out, we went from really struggling to fill an intake to literally overnight we had 2,000 applicants for our contact centre role, which created a different problem, because then our recruitment, our assessors and our recruitment team weren't able to assess that many people that quickly. So kind of put pressure on our recruitment team then to actually get through that large volume. And in fact, we then had too many people and not enough roles, because we were sort of quite a small team that had actually decided to go remote at that time. The team that I manage, I'm about 130 seats, and we ran through 2022, we ran 25% below the headcount that we needed to service our demand, which was really challenging, and kind of drove some of those attrition problems as well, because it was so pressurized with customers queuing, not able to get through. And we were also in a period of significant growth as well in terms of our organisation and our business. So it was a bit of a sort of double whammy. So we needed to make a decision in terms of how we would, attract more people into our contact centres. So we went from we were 130 people, so 25%. We recruited literally 40 people overnight then that joined us all in one go, which was a huge amount of new starters to sort of bring in and try and kind of get upskilled. And also the fact that they were all remote also presented some sort of new challenges that we hadn't had before as well.
Interesting. So where did those 40 people come from? Did they come from within the contact centre world, or did they come in from other sectors? So, for example, one of the comments in the chat is that other industries such as hospitality now offer far better salary wages than pre-pandemic. Apologies, not everyone can see that particular comment. But where do they all come from?
So we've taken a lot from retail, not necessarily contact centre. In fact, I would say the majority of our team don't have contact centre experience. And again, that's been a challenge, because I think what we found, particularly with the remote workers, is people believed that they wanted to do this job, they wanted to work remotely. And the reality is that when that bit and they were sitting in their bedrooms on their own, just talking to customers all day, every day, that actually wasn't quite as attractive as they thought it might be. I've seen there's a question in the chat about the attrition rate. We definitely saw our attrition rate go up with our remote workers. And we've had to kind of change our strategy again to go back to hybrid as a result of that, because we have seen that higher attrition. Also, we've seen it's taken longer for people to get to where we need them in terms of their competency. So around about 3 months longer in terms of people being able to sort of do the role, which again, I would put down to they're not learning by sitting around in amongst the team, that learning by osmosis that happens. They haven't got that instant support of being able to turn to their manager or a colleague to ask a question, and are relying on sort of Teams chats, which just aren't, they're just not instant. You can't get the same response from a Teams chat. So I think there is a place for remote working in terms of when you've got a challenge and you need to bring people in. Would it be my go-to preferred method? 100% not. I'm still all in favour of people together in the office, people working together. I also think, and Kate, it was interesting to hear your comment there about contact centre staff want to come in the office, they want to be together, they want to create that culture. Some do, some don't. We still struggle to bring people into the office, which again, I've been in contact centres for years, and I think that's quite sad, because I feel like we've lost part of what we did have. And again, you kind of really then got, I find myself grappling with myself, just going, is it just because I'm old school and this is what I know, and you need to adapt and just accommodate that this is what some people want. But I really grapple with that conversation as to, well, why would you want that? Why would you not want to come in and see all the wonderful people in the office and be part of that? So I don't know what the answer is. I know what I prefer,
Yeah.
and I know what some people prefer, but
Yeah.
some people just don't.
I'm with you on
Is
that,
the
Trish.
reality,
I
I
think
think.
it's part of the fun,
Mm,
isn't it? Part of
mm.
being in the contact centre environment. It's that culture, it's that
Why
fun
would you not
element.
want it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like,
there's
I think I'm
a
all for
comment.
you.
There's a comment that's come in the chat, which is come to us, which actually I think is one that I'm going to share. Our frontline recruiters are finding outreach approach for those niche advisor roles is having success. Adverts still get response, but outreach is adding value to drive the quality of candidate. Platforms like LinkedIn that you would lean more to for senior, mid and senior hires is now becoming a headhunting platform for advisors in the current markets. I think that's really quite an interesting statement. Alice, I have to bring you in at this point here. What are the expectations that your new recruits are having? Do they understand? There was a question earlier, see if I can find it. Do you think we need to prepare candidates for the role more in the pre-boarding stage? Do you find in your world that actually these candidates understand what it is to work in a contact centre?
Yeah, I think when it comes to new recruits, it is kind of essential that we set really clear expectations from the outset. And I think while some may have prior experience in a contact center, others definitely don't fully grasp what it's going to be like when they first come to that interview, especially if it's their first job outside of retail or hospitality. So we provide really clear expectations from the interview process in terms of their conduct, their working hours, and their performance. And we also set a very structured kind of career path for their first 6 months, which includes kind of how they can qualify for a pay rise, how they can progress to handle calls about our more complicated products than the ones that we train them on initially, and ultimately what they need to do to pass their probation period. We're a very data focused organization, so we have lots of performance tables that get published for everybody so we can keep them engaged and give them full visibility every day on where they're tracking to their goals. And I think just picking up on the comment in the chat from Sarah about should we prepare people more, like definitely we've recently set up a website just for new starters. So even after the interview process, we're drip feeding more and more information to them to make sure this is definitely something that they want to do. So we've got kind of pictures and videos on there of our management team, testimonials from other people that work in their teams, kind of full structure charts and information on our business and customer journey. So we're making sure that before they come through the door on day one, they kind of already feel like they know us. They've put a face to the name. They know what their team leader looks like and they know what they're going to have to do. And that's really helped us to reduce the number of people that we lose in those early stages of training.
So Alice, there's a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to put to you. One is, because I think they are a little bit related. Have you made any changes to your assessment process and seen an impact on quality or attrition as a result? And do you still hold in-person interviews during the process, or is the onboarding process all remote via virtual assessment? So what changes have you made over recent months?
I think the biggest changes we've made are being really clear on expectation setting. I think previously when we had struggled to recruit, we let our standards slip a little bit and didn't nip things in the bud quick enough. Now we're really open and transparent from day one about what it's going to take to work here. And we also share a lot of success stories, as we're finding that a lot of people that join want a career and they want to progress a lot quicker than we've probably seen people wanting to previously. We see people coming in wanting to be a team leader within 6 months or wanting to progress down a more technical route, whereas before people were a lot more open to, oh, it might take me a few years to get there and I'll take my time and I'll go and shadow. But we've really had to show people kind of what they can have if they commit to the training to make sure that we keep them engaged. And with the interviews, we kind of do a mix of face-to-face and over Teams. And we actually found we have similar success for both. And sometimes it sets alarm bells ringing for us if we can see somebody lives 5 minutes down the road, but they don't want to come in for an interview and would prefer Teams. I think we kind of see that as a bit of a warning sign that actually it might be a struggle to get them into the office for training and potentially could they not be quite the right person for us. So we offer a mixture, but I think depending on somebody's reaction to how open they are to coming into the office, it helps us to see, are they going to be the type of person that we're looking for?
And Alice, on that basis, I have got one more question, and then I'm going to ask Kate what she's hearing across our membership. The other question that's in there is, do you think that hybrid office-based roles are reducing the talent pool significantly? Just leaning into what you were saying there about the appetite to come into the office.
Yeah, we've seen kind of a real mix. I think similar to what Jane mentioned about having a higher attrition rate with pure home workers, we saw the same. And because we're business to business and the conversations can be quite challenging, we found a lot of people really struggled mentally to be able to handle these conversations from home and not have the support of people around them, or being able to get instant reassurance if somebody was pushing them really hard to give an instant answer on something that they weren't confident on. Whereas hybrid definitely works really well for us. We do try to get people to stay in the office for their full 6-month induction period, but that doesn't always work. But we are very flexible around, if somebody's getting a parcel delivered one day that they need to be at home for, we're absolutely fine with that. If somebody's working a weekend shift, we say they can work from home. So we try to get people in, but we still show that we do have that flexibility. Everybody's got a laptop, they can work from anywhere. So yeah, it's kind of a real mixture, but definitely hybrid, I think, has helped us. Although it's a smaller talent pool because we want people to be close to the office, I think it's benefited us more than when we kind of recruited across the whole of the UK and had people that just didn't enjoy the job or left really quickly because of the demands.
Thank you, Alice. Kate, what are you seeing across all of the members that you're talking to? Because you're talking to our members all the time, day in, day out. That expectation, what are you hearing?
Expectation with home working and hybrid working. So we are seeing that has shifted. We are seeing that members are telling us that they have had to adapt, whereas home working, they saw themselves that, okay, we can do home working, and maybe they've decided to close down their bricks and mortar operation and said, right, this is going to be the new norm for us. But actually, we are seeing that a lot of organisations and a lot of members are changing that because the employee engagement has dropped. Sometimes they're seeing performance challenges. Sometimes the behaviours have changed from an individual. And actually that they are seeing that it's really difficult to develop those individuals. Whereas it may have been times that historically for that career development, I mentioned before, if they want to go and work in a different department, or go and shadow that area, go and understand what they do. It's really difficult to do that remotely. So actually that hybrid and that balance, to Alice's point, it has its pros and cons. It's really nice to be flexible, that actually it can be that flexible role. You're not just attached to a headset at an old computer desk now with all these screens around you. It is now that you can work on a laptop and you can have that flexibility. But actually, when you're coming in that office environment, me and Jane mentioned it before, it's fun working in that environment. So keeping people engaged. So we are hearing a lot of that we have seen that shift back, but for those real key reasons.
So there's a comment in the chat, about 50% of my department have asked to not work from home at all and want to come into the office. So we do hear that. And where's the other one I want to share? And this, for me, leads into our next poll in a moment. Someone has shared, and apologies, they've shared it to the hosts and panelists only. In my opinion, handling unhappy customers every day is a draining activity. When coupled with a general reconsideration after COVID about the importance of job and personal purpose, it makes it quite challenging. And I think coming back to that first poll that we did, actually just trying to attract enough people into the roles that you've got available is really hard. So as an industry, we are having to go outside of the industry to bring people in. And we know from some of the research that we've done that that people are thinking, actually, if I come and sit on a frontline in a contact centre, I'm going to have grumpy customers trying to call me. And now that's not always the case at all, but we know that frontline role is getting more complex. And we know it's getting harder. It's not like it once was. So I am going to go to our next poll. And our next poll is, how can we attract great talent in the first place? So how can we attract great talent in the first place? So over to you guys. It's multiple choice. Please tick all the things that are that you think we can do to help attract people to work in contact centres. So is it promote positive customer service experiences? That's a bit of a soapbox that I'm on. I would love us to all be promoting those positive customer service experiences. Change the language that we use. Maybe stop measuring every second of time. We know that we're an industry that has metrics for everything. Maybe we should be promoting that more so that they are great places to work. Increasing those base salaries. We've seen some comments in the chat around salaries. Improving the working conditions. Maybe that's a case for you guys that are listening, and maybe it's something else. And please do share that something else in the comments. So what can we do to attract people to work in contact centres? I think you've had enough time. Let's go to the results. Let's see what we think. So we have 48% promote that they are great places to work. They are great places to work. Maybe we should do more. Kate, we've got some work to do here. Increased base salaries. Yes, we are hoping to bring a new salary and skills guide to our members soon. So hopefully we can see a change in salaries. And arguably salaries should change because the complexity of the role is changing. And promoting positive customer service experiences. Yay, I've got some support for that one. This is good. Kate, what's your take on these results?
I think the salaries is always been there. There's always been a question over the right salary for a frontline colleague. What's the right salary to pay? So I think the salary and skills guide has been really useful. We get really great feedback to support that from across our members. So I'm really pleased that actually that has been a benefit that our members really like, because it's always been there. And it's always great if I put my old contact centre leader hat on. It's one that, what is the right salary? What was the right salary working in Crewe or in Stoke in comparison to in London? What do we expect of those individuals? So I think that's always been there. What I really like the fact is that it's promoting a great place to work. You're right. We've talked about it before. It's a fun environment. There are so many skills that you gain working within the contact centre and build a career. I mean, started at 19 years old and selling frozen food and Sara Lee double chocolate gateaus was my very first contact centre role. I never thought that I would be, so passionate about working in the industry and had an opportunity to manage contact centres across Europe. And, great opportunities that are given as part of that role with the right attitude, the right behaviours and the values. So I think the more that we can do that and celebrate that, to also give them the tools to be able to do that role as well. So I quite like that. I like the promoting it. I like the fact that everyone's feeling the same kind of passion that we are.
And actually, just to expand on that, one of the things that we obviously do here at the CCMA is we have Career Talk, which we are just in the process of putting that as a podcast on Spotify. So our intention is to try and get out to a broader audience and be able to show just how good it is, how much fun it is working in this industry. Jane, I want to come to you and ask, what's your take on what you've seen? Does this resonate with what you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would definitely build on the career element, and I know there's sort of lots of comments in the chat about that, but I think it's really great. It's a really great place to start in an organisation, and those skills that you get really set you up then as kind of that talent for the rest of the organisation. The team that I work in sort of personally, we've got our reputation is we are a talent factory. So that's kind of how we're seen. And a lot of my team kind of end up in other teams within Bupa. And I love that. And I think it's really great. You sort of see the other teams around and you see your people in other teams, and they're spreading that kind of magic and, positively promoting the contact centre as well within the other teams. I would also pick on the great customer service. So I think you're right. People think the contact centres are about grumpy customers, and actually they're so far removed from that. So it's really interesting. I'm in the office today, and I was chatting to my team kind of around me this morning, and asking them, why do you stay here? You know, what do you like? And the number one thing was, I get to talk to customers every day, and I can build rapport, and I can make a difference to them. They didn't talk about salary. They didn't go, oh, it's hit me because I'm earning, and our salaries are quite decent. They're not talking about that. They're not. The number one thing they talk about is the customer and the difference that they make to the customers' lives. So I think showcasing that and removing that sort of perception of it's just about grumpy customers is just not. You know, you have the ability to make a difference every single day. I'm really lucky at Bupa. You know, our mission is about helping people live longer, healthier, happier lives, and we really do that. So I think that we live and breathe that. It's in our values, and our teams really have the opportunity to do that. So I think showcasing that is really important. And then the other thing that wasn't there, and maybe I'm not sure if it's in the chat or not, but I think there's something about job variety, and I think that it's our job as kind of leaders to ensure that our frontline team members have the right amount of variety in their roles. And I think that's hard sometimes. That's a challenge when you're working in a busy inbound environment, particularly if it's like high call volumes and high demands. But job variety is, I think, becoming more and more important, and people want to have variety in role. And I think it's our responsibility to work out how that happens. So whether it's a case of, you know, you can have an hour doing admin, or an hour on outbound, an hour on omni, you know, I don't know kind of how that works, and we're still wrangling with that, but we're definitely seeing people want more variety in their roles. And I think that's something that we need to kind of work out how we bring into kind of contact centres. So some of that repetitiveness is interrupted by some different things in people's days. And I think that's hard.
What have you seen across members that have shared actually how they are bringing that variety in? And I know that some members have talked about bringing in new skills so that they do, and that's part of their progress as a frontline colleague, that they bring in new skills, they bring in new channels, so they become more multi-skilled.
Yeah, so what we are seeing and hearing is that multiple ways to either multi-skilling on different products and services is one, and we are hearing, and you know, we did this years ago, was that you start off and you come in and do one product, and I think Alice mentioned it before as part of her induction program, and then it's then that, what's that career journey, what's the next skill, what does that look and feel like, to make it varied, and maybe it's different systems. The other things is an opportunity to do other activities. So whether that is being part of employee engagement teams, maybe something around your some of your particular employee groups, and giving somebody empowerment to actually do something over and above their role that actually is not just servicing the customer, it's something to support your organisation and your people as well. So we are seeing that people are adapting, members are adapting how that they keep it varied for their people, because I think I went to one of my members and say, not all of our customers phone and say, hey, I've had a great service. They're phoning because they need help. They need help with something, and that can sometimes be a little bit draining if it's back-to-back interactions. So keeping it varied is really important in one way or another, whether that's multi-skills or whether that is different tasks over and above.
Thank you. I'm loving all the comments in the chat, by the way. Loving it. Please do check out those comments. There's lots of sharing of experiences and some advice along the way. And I'd like to explore that recruitment process, recruitment through to induction. Now, Alice, I remember sitting at a dinner with you, I think it was about 18 months ago, it might be a little bit longer ago, and you described how people were dropping out of the recruitment process. And I remember one particular example where you mentioned that you'd implemented lots of communication to keep people in the process, and you discovered that someone dropped out of the process because of the dress code. Is that still the case? What is it that are causing people to drop out of the process? That maybe you're seeing, or maybe you're I know that you obviously talk to other members too. Why do people drop out of that recruitment process?
I guess firstly, thankfully, that isn't still the case. We've definitely seen a big improvement. And I guess it's probably no secret that majority of contact centres did really struggle to, I think, attract and retain talent after lockdown. However, we are definitely in a very different place now. At Take Payments, we recruit directly. So we don't use any agencies. And all of our inductions throughout the past year have been full. Whereas definitely straight after lockdown, we really did struggle, and we'd find people that we thought were great and they were really engaged, and they would drop out because of what we would class as the smallest things, such as the dress code, or, oh, I woke up not feeling too well this morning, so thanks, but no thanks, I don't really fancy it anymore. I'll just find another job. Not, oh, I'm feeling unwell, but please can I still join tomorrow? So it really was a challenge. But if we tend to lose anybody now, it's because they're not meeting our expectations rather than they're not enjoying the job, or they simply change their minds about working in a contact centre, which is definitely a big shift. And I think what's really helping is, like, there's more of a buzz about contact centres again. I think, like, coming out of lockdown, I think it probably got a bit flat, and people were used to working in like track and trace call centres and doing the same thing again and again. I think now people are finding that variety in contact centres where it is exciting, and actually in most businesses it really is at the heart of what they do, and it's very rewarding because it's speaking to customers, resolving complicated problems, and getting to troubleshoot at the same time. So I think the mindset has changed in people, and once people tend to come through the door on day one, they love it or hate it. You know, somebody might think early on, it's not really for me, or they can't meet our expectations. But after that point, we don't lose people. I think they kind of get that bug and that energy that Jane talked about, where people just love being in the contact centre environment, and it is so nice to see.
So Alice, there's a question that's come in just for you. Did you guys did you have a recruiter in-house in order for you to do your own recruitment? And did they conduct initial stage interviews, or did the managers do it? How did you do that in-house?
So we have an in-house recruitment manager supported by a recruitment administrator, and they do all of the initial screening, and we've had to work really closely with them. I think previously they probably thought they were just looking for customer service. Maybe myself and my management team hadn't done a great job at explaining just what the role entails, and that, you know, it is technical, and you will get some customers that are very upset, and you will get some people that really try your patience. But at the same time, you get these conversations that are really, really rewarding. So we spent a lot of time with the recruitment team actually getting them to listen to our calls, coming to shadow people on the floor, and speaking to the people that they'd recruited that have done really well, to kind of understand exactly what it is that we're looking for. And now we see quite a high success rate on interviews too, where when they book somebody into one of my manager's diaries, the manager goes in thinking this is going to be really good, rather than, oh, is this person going to show up, and do they actually understand what it is that they're here for? So I think I've learned that you have to work in really close partnership with the recruitment team to get the right people in. It's not just a case of putting out a job advert and hundreds of the right people just flooding through the door.
Thank you. And there's a comment in the chat. We tried to bring everyone in to experience our centre and culture and meet the managers before committing to the role. Kate, is that whole understanding about what the role entails and experiencing that culture, is that something that is a challenge?
I think it is still a challenge. So we have recently we've done a campaign with one of our members who were struggling to recruit within a particular area, and so we've worked with them, with their recruitment team, again with their internal recruitment team, to really change that experience. And as part of that journey, it was about attracting people from outside of the industry with those transferable skills. So not just looking at somebody that had got contact centre experience. And within the groups that we had all different backgrounds. We had chefs, we had cleaners, we had full-time mums that were returning back to work. We had one person who worked in a contact centre, but we've got all different industries with different backgrounds. And part of that initiative was all about understanding what that role actually is going to be like. So we worked with them as part of that experience day, and that was all about understanding actually what is the role of the contact centre advisor. What does it look and feel like? This is actually what the environment looks like. This is what it feels like. These are the types of people that work within the environment. These are the leaders. This is our values. This is what the day in the life of actually looks and feels like. And then following that, we then did giving them the skills, because they'd not worked in the industry. We then worked with them and supported them on one day to give them the actual skills of what it's actually like. How do you do that role? And also, you're going to be on the phone, or you're going to be on chat. It's not going to be that you're going to be able to just go and get yourself a coffee. You are going to be that you are monitored. This is what it looks and feels like. The back of that has been really successful. So I think that, and there's a lot of organisations trying different ways of doing that, but I think being really clear, setting the expectation, and giving a taster of what it's actually like is really helping to those success rates. And we definitely saw that. I mean, those individuals are still there now and doing exceptionally well, because they know what they've set themselves up for. They know what it's like. So that's what we hear. But I think that there's lots of different ways that organisations are trying that. But the more you can do it to try something and take them on that journey of what it's like in that role is important.
Yeah, I agree, Kate. So I'm going to work on an assumption that people make it to day one of their job in a contact centre. Jane, what does that induction look like at Bupa? How do you take people through to the point that they are comfortable, confident and competent on the phone, or on whichever channel they're on?
Yeah, so our inductions, so for those teams that we recruit to work in the office, so because again it's different if you're obviously remote, and a lot of our teams we're still recruiting remote in a lot of our contact centres. We've changed our strategy, moved back to hybrids, but actually we're now moving back to remote because again our candidate pool has dried up once more. So we've kind of got a bit of a mix going on in terms of how we're training people. But for those in the office, we do a sort of the pre-boarding that Alice and Kate both talked about. We have an onboarding evening where they come in, they meet managers, they meet the teams, they get a flavour for what it's like. And actually that's a really good indicator if they turn up for the onboarding, are they going to be there for day one? So that's a really good test of that. In terms of our inductions are typically sort of 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the role that you're learning. And what we try to do is we will bring leaders into induction kind of throughout that process. We're very clear, picking up on Alice's point, we're really clear on day one as to expectations. So it's very much about this is how it works around here, this is our values, this is our purpose, this is some of the HR-y stuff that you need to know. So we set that out really early. And then what we will do is we'll bring in different members of the team into the training group to actually kind of meet and greet. So that might be, we quite like to bring in people that have just been through induction, so they're quite new and they can talk about their experiences, because we do find sharing that experience of it's going to be a bit hard at times, you're going to doubt yourself. We've moved away from testing candidates through the induction period. So we now do learning checks. Now they are still the same thing, but we've changed the language that we use around them to actually then sort of remove the fear factor. So people don't know they're being tested necessarily at the point that they're being tested. So those kind of knowledge checks, those learning checks and building those in. We introduce them to managers really early. So again, that they get to kind of meet the managers, put faces to names, and when they're around the office, then that's happening. The other thing that we've committed to do, and we found has worked quite well for our remote workers, and we didn't know that we were going to do this when we went remote, was actually create opportunities for them to come to an office. Now that's been quite difficult. I'm based in the south. We've got one guy who works in Scotland. We've got a lady that works in Northern Ireland. But actually we pay for their travel. We bring them down for social events. So at our end of year celebration, we brought them down we let them travel. We kind of paid for that, put them in a hotel. So again, treating them as one team, and that wherever they sit, whether that's remote or not, that they're as important and we want them to be together. Not everybody wants to come to those, not everybody wants to travel that far, but the opportunity for them to be involved is really, really important for us. The other thing that's important, and we do this really early, is just starting to talk about those career pathways. So we don't leave that. That's part of the induction, finding out, where do they want to be, what's important. And okay, that's not going to happen during that induction period, but we've already started to find out what's important to them, and started to invest in their sort of development and understanding where it is they see themselves in 6 months' time, a year time, and starting to support and create those networks for them. When I think about remote workers, again, we created our first remote contracts in November 22. Those teams have just come up to their sort of 12 months anniversary and are looking for those career opportunities. And that's been new for us, is as an organisation, not all teams have recruited fully remote. So how do we create the same opportunities? In my team, I've got 30% of my team now remote working. In some of the bigger contact centres, we've got over 250 people that are now remote, that will be coming up to that 1 year anniversary and wanting those career opportunities. So we're opening up that conversation across our organisation to say, there's about 300 people here that are going to want their next steps and their next careers, and we need to think quite seriously about other teams recruiting remote workers, and they haven't necessarily had to, because they haven't had the same recruitment challenges that we have. So we're in the midst of that at the moment, having those conversations and creating opportunities that aren't just within the contact centres, but outside, for people to develop their careers as well. So that's quite interesting.
Thank you, Jane. And I want to say, extending to that, one of the commentaries that is in the chat is around mental health, and that new people coming in, they may have underlying personal conditions that mean actually some of the challenges of working in a contact centre are being impacted or are impacting their mental health. What's your experience, Jane, around how you're able to support people in those early, when confidence isn't high, it can be scary, and how are you specifically looking to support people suffering with mental health challenges in those early days?
Okay. I mean, I would say that mental health challenges isn't new. It does seem to be more prevalent kind of now, and I don't know if that's a post-COVID kind of thing that's going on, but it definitely seems to be more prevalent. I think for us, it's about having those conversations early. Now, we still sadly see people join us and not declare or tell us that they need additional support. So sometimes that comes up in training, as opposed to us finding out before and then being able to make adjustments. There's still fear around people disclosing early and therefore losing out on an offer, which is sad. But that's fact. But I think actually it's about opening up that conversation. Now, we're a health and wellbeing company, right? So that's our bread and butter. We're really lucky. We've got loads of support around us, and we're set up to support. So again, it's promoting that. It's making sure that we tell people very early on that the support that's available for all of them. We also have, like most organisations, I'm sure, mental health first aiders. So signposting to mental health first aiders where they're required. And just having that regular dialogue. I think we're also seeing sort of neurodiversity becoming a really big topic, and again, how we're supporting our colleagues as they go through training, making adjustments and what they need. And again, unfortunately, not everybody feels confident to declare before they join, but we as a company promote the fact that we're an inclusive employer. We have internal networks, again, like I'm sure lots of organisations do, and we do have a neurodiversity sort of network. So we will bring our networks into our induction really early and talk about those, so that people know they can join part of any network that they're interested in or want to be part of, whether that's a parents network. I run a women's network, a men's network. That we've got networks that anybody can be part of. So again, talking about that quite early and kind of creating that same space for people to talk about this stuff is important.
Thank you, Jane. And do you know what? The number of conversations I've had in the last few months around just how diverse the contact centre industry is, certainly compared to many other industries, it's brilliant. And yeah, we've got some great inclusive programs going on in our space. So yeah, I'd like to think that people do have the confidence, but I get it. It's hard to share that with a potential employer or a new employer. Alice, what does your induction process look like, and how does it compare to what you've just heard Jane talk about from a booth perspective?
It sounds very similar, to be honest, to what Jane's described. So we have a 5-week induction program, which consists of 2 solid weeks of classroom training, and then a further 3 weeks, which is a mix of call taking and further classroom sessions. And typically between weeks 3 and 5, we bring business experts into the sessions, as well as just our core induction trainer, which we find works really well. So people have the opportunity to ask questions directly to heads of different departments or specialists on certain topics, and that helps to keep the engagement up, and again makes people feel like they're part of something bigger. It's not just them in the contact center, it's they are working with the whole business to help our customers and making sure they understand that they play a really key part in the business's success. And then after week 8, we invite people back into training for what we call tier 2 training, which is where they kind of progress to that top standard of contact center agent, where they're trained on our most advanced products. We used to train everybody together initially on everything, and we found it was just too much. So we found if we equip them for the basics up until week 5, then providing they're feeling confident and they're hitting their targets at any point after week 8, we'll bring them back in for tier 2 training. And that has worked really well for us, kind of splitting things out rather than expecting people to learn absolutely everything on day 1. And then touching on what Jane said about kind of well-being and looking after people, we have a head of employee engagement who goes into every induction and gets to meet people personally. So as well as people having the support of myself and their line manager, they've got somebody kind of independent who sits outside of the department that they can go to at any time if there's something that they want to share, but perhaps don't know how to raise it with their line manager, or they don't want people that work directly with them to know. So that gives them that extra level of support without it being somebody that's too close.
Thank you, Alice. Now, I think it's time to go to our third poll. I'm conscious that we've got about 10 minutes. So let's go to our third poll. And our third poll, are you ready to tap away? How do you keep frontline colleagues beyond 6 months? Is it that great culture? That kind of leans into an earlier conversation. Is it job satisfaction? Is it that employee value proposition? And having a really solid value proposition for colleagues? Is it lots of support in the early days? We've just heard Jane and Alice talk about that in their environments. Is it setting those clear expectations about the role itself, being on the phone or being on a set channel? Is it the salary potential? Maybe that's the thing that keeps people beyond 6 months, or maybe it's their career path opportunities and being able to articulate that in those early months. So how do you keep frontline colleagues beyond 6 months? Right, I think we've given you a chance to answer that one. Let's have a look at the results. Now, great culture, it's got to be up there, isn't it? It has absolutely got to be up there. 63% say it's got to be about the great culture. That's why people stay, and lots of support in those early days. And third in there was that career path opportunities. And like, you're right. I think that's one of the things that we're hearing from members is that having the opportunity to have those career paths. And through Career Talk, some of those senior leaders that I talk to, they do share that they have been in lots of different functions in the contact centre before they've become a head of contact centre, before they've become a director of customer service. Jane, really briefly, why do you think people stay at Bupa longer than 6 months?
So I asked this question this morning, Lee, because I'm in the office. I was like, well, let's ask the people why they stay. Because you kind of think as leaders, we're going to do all this great stuff and it's working and everything else. Culture was number one. People didn't call it culture. They talked about the fact they can be themselves at work. They talked about they can actually have great conversations with customers. They talked about having best friends, and I really liked that. And actually, they talked about belonging and a feeling of belonging. And all of that, I think I would sum up as culture. And as they were talking and telling me, I was like, oh, you have that moment where you go, something's working. So I think the culture is about everybody and all of us. It's not about leaders being responsible for creating a great place. So yeah, I'd wrap it up in culture. Thank you.
Alice, same question to you. Where is it working for you? Where are people staying beyond those 6 months? What's keeping them?
I agree with Jane in terms of culture. I think, of course, people love the progression opportunities, and we've talked a lot about that, of setting that structure when they first start and showing them where they can get to. But I think people do really like that sense of belonging. And often when people are talking to me and I'm in the office, what they say they really like is kind of that feedback loop, where if they raise an issue, they like it when I go back to them and say, this is what I've done about it. The same with when they kind of log their call data and have to report on the reasons for the calls. They like to know what's happened off the back of it. They like to see that due to the data they've shared, we've actually been able to stop certain calls coming in because we've fixed processes. So they love to hear kind of what we've done off the back of feedback they've given. And then also really like celebrating how they've helped customers. So we do a lot around 5-star reviews, a lot about CSAT. And probably the thing that people talk to me the most about is if they ever get a negative CSAT survey, because they just can't bear it, because they feel so proud to be helping customers. And if anybody ever leaves them a negative review, it genuinely upsets them because they take such pride in working here. And I think that's really great to see. And it's like the things that sometimes we take for granted that people like the most, and kind of that leadership presence too. There was about a month ago, I didn't go into the office as I had lots of off-site meetings, and people were like, where are you? Are you okay? You've not been in. Is something going on? I think it's those small things where they just love hearing from people. They love the engagement, and they like to feel like they're part of something special.
I love it. I love it. Kate, you're talking to our members all the time. You're listening to the challenges that they're going through and how they're overcoming them. What are you hearing from across our membership? How are contact centre leaders improving their retention?
So I think there's a few elements. I think there's a lot more focus around developing the leaders and helping the leaders to be able to support their people. We are seeing that there's a huge focus over the last 12 months, even more so than what I've ever seen before, is so many organisations, so many members putting real clear leadership development plans for their leaders. The other one is it's important to create that culture. We've all talked about it. The culture is so important, but creating that environment that people want to work in, they want to be brand proud, and they enjoy the role that they're in. And the other area was all around, which I mentioned before, is that career pathways. We are hearing so many more organisations thinking of different ways to promote. What are the other opportunities? You don't have to just be a team leader if that's what you don't want to do. You might want to go into product, you might want to go into IT, might be HR, might be training. There's lots of different opportunities. So I think there's a huge focus as well of showcasing what opportunities there actually are within those organisations. There's a lot of work that's been taking place, what we hear from across our members.
Thank you, Kate. Do you know what? I have loved seeing all the chat that we've seen in the chat, and I think to those that have participated in the chat, thank you so much for doing that. We will pull that chat out, and I think there's along with our polls, I think there's an article for our website there looming. So thank you so much for your contribution. This has been incredibly insightful. Hopefully, you guys have all taken away lots of tips and inspiration for how you can really get that early stage attrition down, and hopefully giving you some. I want to thank you to our panel, to Jane, to Alice, and to Kate for sharing your experiences and your ideas, to all those that have participated in the chat. And of course, we are here to help you here at the CCMA. And it's through events like this, but also through structured training that we deliver through the Academy. So you know where we are. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.